It was a bright, distant star system where the alien species known as the Lorithians lived. Their homeworld, Lorith, was known for its vast jungles, towering mountains, and serene oceans. The Lorithians were a peaceful species, highly intelligent, with an innate connection to nature. For centuries, they had lived in harmony with the environment, perfecting their advanced technology without disturbing the delicate balance of their planet. But something strange was happening in the heart of their government's capital city. A young Lorithian girl, named Alira, had been chosen to represent her species in a diplomatic mission to the humans of Earth. Her people had heard of humans for decades, but only now, after the discovery of intergalactic travel, were they able to meet them face to face. Alira had been preparing for this moment for months. She had studied human culture, language, and history in great detail. But no matter how much she read or practiced, nothing could have prepared her for the moment when she would actually step foot on Earth. Her ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, a sleek, silver vessel reflecting the sun's rays as it cut through the clouds. It landed softly in a remote forest clearing, the trees swaying gently as the engines powered down. Alira's heart raced in her chest, her excitement and curiosity growing with each passing second. The door of the ship slid open, and she stepped out, her silver-blue skin gleaming in the sunlight. Her large purple eyes blinked as she adjusted to the brightness of Earth. She could hear the chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves, sounds she had never experienced before. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. A group of humans stood waiting for her, led by a tall man with short brown hair and a warm smile. He was dressed in a simple outfit, something that seemed to blend perfectly with the natural surroundings. His name was Captain Jason Ford, a representative of Earth's Space Exploration Division, and he was here to welcome Alira. "Welcome to Earth, Alira," he said in a calm, reassuring voice. "We've been eagerly awaiting your arrival." Alira stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to say. She had heard much about humans, but now, in person, they were so much more real than she could have imagined. Jason's smile was genuine, and his presence seemed comforting, as if he held a depth of understanding that could bridge the gap between two very different worlds. "Thank you," Alira replied, her voice soft yet clear. "I am honored to be here." Jason took a step forward, extending his hand. Alira hesitated for a moment, her mind racing with questions. She had read about human customs, including their gestures of greeting, but she wasn't sure how to respond. After a brief pause, she reached out and shook his hand gently, her skin cool to the touch. As their hands met, something strange happened. Alira felt a sudden warmth, a pulse of energy that surged through her entire body. It wasn't unpleasant, but it was unexpected. It felt as though a spark had ignited within her, and her heart began to race. For a brief moment, she wondered if something had gone wrong with her biochemistry. Jason, too, seemed to notice the unusual sensation, his expression shifting ever so slightly. But he quickly masked his reaction, not wanting to alarm the alien visitor. He had been trained to handle all sorts of unexpected events during his time as a diplomat, but this was something entirely new. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. Alira nodded quickly, trying to steady herself. "Yes, I'm fine. It was just a strange sensation." The group continued with the introductions and pleasantries, but Alira couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. There was an unspoken connection, something that transcended words and species. As they made their way to the nearby facility where the human delegates were waiting, Alira's mind wandered. She couldn't explain what had happened when she touched Jason's hand. Was it a simple reaction to the unfamiliar atmosphere of Earth, or was it something more profound? She had never felt anything like it before, not even with her own kind. The day passed in a blur of meetings, discussions, and tours of the Earth facility, but no matter where she went or what she did, Alira couldn't forget the strange feeling that had come over her during that first encounter. She had read about human emotions, their complexities and depth, but she never imagined it would affect her in this way. As night fell, Illyra stood alone on the observation deck of the facility, gazing out at the stars. She wondered what lay beyond the reaches of the universe. Her mind was still clouded with questions about her connection with Jason, and she couldn't help but feel a pull, an invisible thread tying her to him. The next morning, Illyra found herself once again standing before Captain Jason Ford. Today, they were scheduled to attend the first formal meeting between the Lorithians and the human representatives. Illyra had prepared for this moment for weeks, but as she entered the conference room, the sensation from their first encounter still lingered in the back of her mind. She tried to push it aside. There was no time for distractions. The future of the Lorithian-Human alliance depended on her ability to represent her people with dignity and professionalism. But no matter how hard she tried to focus on the diplomatic talks, she couldn't shake the odd feeling whenever she glanced at Jason. Jason, for his part, seemed perfectly composed, his expression neutral as he welcomed her into the room. "Good morning, Illyra. Are you ready for today's discussions?" Illyra nodded, though inside, her heart raced a little faster. "Yes, Captain Ford. I am ready." The room was filled with representatives from both Earth and Lorith. Humans, dressed in formal attire, sat around a long table, their attention fixed on Illyra. She could see their curiosity and interest in her, but there was also something else, a sense of unease. She could tell that despite the years of study and preparations, they still didn't fully understand her species. Illyra, on the other hand, had no fear of humans. In fact, she found them fascinating. Their quick thinking, their ability to adapt to challenges, and their remarkable resilience in the face of adversity were qualities she admired deeply. But that same admiration had slowly begun to develop into something more. She wasn't sure what it was, but it had to do with Jason. The way his presence seemed to comfort her, the way his voice made her heart flutter. These were feelings she hadn't expected, especially from someone so different. As the meeting progressed, Illyra spoke about her people's values, their respect for the environment, and their desire for peaceful cooperation. She explained the technological advancements the Lorithians had made and how they could help Earth achieve its own goals in space exploration. Jason sat across from her, listening intently, his blue eyes focused on every word she spoke. Yet, whenever their gazes met, there was a strange energy in the air. Illyra had seen this kind of reaction among the Lorithians before, but it was always between close family members or during bonding rituals. She knew this feeling wasn't something typical. It wasn't just admiration or respect. It was deeper than that, something more instinctive and primal. At one point, during a break in the meeting, Jason and Illyra found themselves standing side by side in front of a large window overlooking Earth's landscape. The sky was a brilliant shade of blue, and the sun was beginning its descent, painting the clouds in shades of pink and orange. "This planet is beautiful," Illyra said softly, her voice filled with awe. Jason glanced at her, surprised by the depth of her words. "It really is," he agreed. "I guess I take it for granted sometimes." For a moment, they stood in silence, both lost in the view. Illyra felt the pull again, the same warmth, the same connection that had startled her the day before. She wondered if Jason felt it too. "I've been thinking about something," Jason said, breaking the silence. His tone was casual, but there was a hint of seriousness in his voice. "What is it?" Illyra asked, turning to face him. "You seem different," he said, his expression thoughtful. "I mean, you're not like any alien I've ever met. You're more like us than I expected." Illyra blinked, unsure of how to respond. She had never thought of herself as similar to humans, but his words made her wonder. "In what way?" she asked, intrigued. "You're not just about technology or knowledge," Jason continued. "There's something else, something personal, like you can feel things the way humans do." Illyra felt a strange flutter in her chest at his words. Could it be that he was feeling the same connection she was? The thought made her both nervous and excited. "I don't know how to explain it," Illyra admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. but I think I understand what you mean. Jason studied her for a moment, his gaze softening. Maybe it's because we're not as different as we think. Maybe there's something between us that we don't fully understand yet. Elira's heart skipped a beat at his words. She had always thought of herself as different, an outsider. But now, in this moment, with Jason standing so close, she wondered if perhaps the universe was drawing them together for a reason. As the meeting continued, the bond between them only seemed to grow stronger. Elira found herself more drawn to Jason than ever before, her thoughts drifting back to the warmth she had felt when their hands had touched. It was as if they were connected by something beyond the physical world, something neither of them could explain. Later that evening, as Elira lay in her quarters, she couldn't help but replay the day's events in her mind. She felt the stirrings of something new, something exciting, and it scared her. She had come to Earth to form an alliance, to bring her people closer to the humans. But now, with every passing moment, she couldn't deny the possibility that her connection with Jason was leading her down a path she had never expected. And she wasn't sure if she was ready for what that path might bring. The following days passed in a blur of diplomatic meetings, research presentations, and shared meals. Elira found herself spending more time with Jason, whether it was during formal discussions or casual moments between the sessions. Despite the overwhelming tasks at hand, there was an undeniable connection between them that seemed to deepen with each passing hour. It was as if the universe itself had brought them together for a reason, though neither of them could fully comprehend what that reason might be. Elira couldn't help but notice the way Jason always made sure to listen to her, giving her his full attention, even when others seemed distracted. She admired his focus and the way he seemed to genuinely care about what she had to say. At times, when their eyes met, she felt the strange warmth course through her once more, a sensation that she had never experienced with any being from her world. Jason, for his part, found himself increasingly drawn to Elira's presence. Her intelligence, her graceful mannerisms, and her otherworldly beauty were only part of the reason. There was something deeper that called to him, something he couldn't quite place. He had met many people in his life, but none had ever affected him in the way Elira did. It wasn't just physical attraction. No, it was something more profound. He had come to Earth's space program to facilitate relations with the Lorithians, to ensure peaceful alliances. But the more time he spent with Elira, the more he began to wonder if their connection was more than just professional. One evening, after another long day of negotiations, Jason invited Elira to take a walk with him in the facility's garden. The lush greenery of Earth's plants surrounded them, and the air was cool and fresh. It was a welcome break from the sterile environment of the conference rooms, and Elira was happy for the chance to relax. As they strolled along the path, the soft hum of distant conversation faded, leaving only the sounds of nature in their wake. The trees whispered in the wind, and flowers bloomed in colors Elira had never seen on her home planet. She felt at peace here, more at ease than she had in days. "This garden is beautiful," Elira said, her voice filled with wonder as she reached out to touch a delicate blossom. "I never imagined Earth's flora could be so vibrant." Jason smiled, watching her appreciate the simple beauty of the world. "I've always thought the same. It's easy to forget how amazing Earth is when you see it every day." They walked in silence for a few moments, the shared tranquility offering a quiet space for both of them to think. Elira's mind wandered back to the strange bond she had felt from the moment she met Jason. It was more than just a passing sensation. It was something that seemed to grow stronger every time she was near him. "Jason," she began, her voice hesitant, "I have to ask something. I've been feeling something strange since I arrived here. It's a kind of pull, a connection that I can't explain." Jason stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression thoughtful. "I've felt it too," he said quietly. "It's hard to put into words, but I think it's something beyond just biology. It's like we're tied to each other in some way." Elira felt her heart race at his words. Could it be that he was feeling the same thing? She had been afraid to speak of it, worried that it was only in her mind. But now that Jason had mentioned it, she felt a surge of relief. "You're not alone in feeling this, Elira," Jason continued. "I don't understand it fully, but there's definitely something happening between us." Elira's breath caught in her throat. She had never expected to be so open with another being, let alone a human. But somehow, with Jason, it felt natural, as though they had always been meant to share these moments. "I'm glad I'm not the only one who feels it," Elira replied softly, her voice filled with quiet emotion. "But I don't know what to make of it. We come from different worlds. Our people have never been connected in this way before." Jason nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. "I know, and I can't pretend to have the answers. But maybe it's a sign that our connection is part of something bigger, something we're not supposed to understand yet." Elira looked up at him, her large purple eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty. "Do you think we are meant to be connected?" Jason thought for a moment, his gaze steady. "I don't know what the future holds, Elira, but I do know that the bond between us is real, and that's something worth exploring." They continued walking, the quiet night wrapping around them like a protective blanket. As they moved deeper into the garden, Elira found herself feeling something she hadn't expected, a sense of hope. She had come to Earth with the purpose of diplomacy, to represent her people and forge a peaceful future. But now, as she walked beside Jason, she couldn't help but feel that there was more at stake than just the alliance between their species. This bond they shared was something new, something beyond simple diplomacy. And though it was uncertain and unfamiliar, Elira knew she couldn't ignore it. The future of both their worlds, and perhaps their very connection, was just beginning to unfold. The next few days were filled with preparations for the first official public presentation of the Lorithian-Human Alliance. Elira and Jason spent most of their time in meetings, finalizing the details of their shared plans. But despite the business at hand, Elira couldn't stop thinking about their growing connection. Every moment with Jason seemed to carry a quiet intensity, and the warmth she felt when they were near each other was undeniable. Jason, for his part, tried to keep his focus on the mission. His job was to ensure that the alliance between Earth and the Lorithians went smoothly, and he couldn't afford to be distracted. But every time he looked at Elira, the connection between them seemed to grow stronger. He had been around many people in his life, but none of them made him feel the way Elira did. There was something magnetic about her presence, something that made him want to know more about her. The day of the presentation arrived, and both Elira and Jason stood before a large gathering of representatives from Earth and other intergalactic species. It was a grand event, designed to celebrate the beginning of a new era of peace and cooperation. Elira stood at the front of the stage, her purple eyes scanning the room of eager faces. She could feel the weight of the moment. The hopes of both her people and the humans were resting on this occasion. Jason stood beside her, offering her a reassuring smile. He could sense her nervousness, though she tried to hide it. "You're doing great," he whispered, his voice soft but steady. "Just speak from your heart." Elira nodded, her heart racing. She had prepared for this speech for weeks, but now that the moment was finally here, she felt as though she were standing at the edge of a vast unknown. The future of both her people and the humans depended on the success of this new alliance. Taking a deep breath, Elira stepped forward and addressed the crowd. "Esteemed representatives of Earth and our neighboring worlds, I stand before you today with both humility and hope. Humility, for I know that the Lorithians are but one piece of the vast puzzle that is our universe, and hope, for the alliance we are forming today holds the promise of a future where all of us, no matter our origins, can live in harmony." Her voice was steady, yet there was a quiet tremor in the words. Elira had never been one to speak publicly, but she felt the weight of her people's trust behind her. She knew that her words carried the hopes of an entire civilization, and that knowledge kept her grounded. As she spoke, she caught Jason's gaze. The warmth in his eyes made her feel more confident, more certain of her mission. It was as if the bond between them was pushing her forward, giving her the strength to continue. "We may come from different worlds," Elira continued, "but we share one common goal: peace. The Lorithians have long been committed to preserving the balance of nature, and we believe that the future of all life in the galaxy lies in unity, understanding, and respect for one another. Our species have much to offer each other, and together, we can achieve greatness." The crowd was silent, hanging on her every word. Elira could see that they were moved, that they understood the significance of this moment. She paused for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "We, the Lorithians, are ready to share our knowledge and our resources, but we also come to learn from you, the people of Earth. We have much to gain from each other, and I believe that through our cooperation, we will build a future where all species, human and Lorithian alike, can thrive." The room erupted into applause, the sound echoing off the walls. Elira felt a surge of relief wash over her. She had done it. She had spoken her truth, and the message had been received with open arms. As the applause died down, Jason leaned toward Elira and whispered, "That was incredible." She smiled at him, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and gratitude. "Thank you, Jason. I couldn't have done it without you." The rest of the presentation went smoothly. The speeches were followed by discussions about future collaborations between the two species. Scientists from both Earth and Lorith exchanged ideas, while engineers discussed possible joint ventures in space exploration. Elira and Jason stayed by each other's side, exchanging occasional glances and quiet words. The connection between them had deepened even further, but there was still a sense of uncertainty about where it might lead. Later that evening, after the formal events had ended, Jason invited Elira to join him for a quiet dinner. They sat together at a small table on the balcony of the facility, overlooking the twinkling city lights in the distance. The air was cool, and a gentle breeze swept through the night, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. "I'm glad you agreed to come here," Jason said, his voice soft. "It's been a long day, but I wanted to share this moment with you." Elira nodded, taking in the peaceful atmosphere. "I'm glad too," she said. "It's nice to have a moment to breathe." The day was overwhelming. They sat in comfortable silence, enjoying the view and each other's company. Elira's thoughts wandered once again to the bond between them. She knew that there was something more happening, something beyond just the diplomatic mission they had embarked on. The connection was undeniable, and it was growing stronger with each passing moment. Jason reached across the table and gently took her hand in his, the warmth of his touch sending a ripple of energy through her. Elira's breath caught in her throat as she looked into his eyes. She could feel it now more than ever, the connection that went beyond words, beyond species. It was as if the universe itself had brought them together for a purpose. But what that purpose was, Elira didn't yet know. All she knew was that she couldn't ignore the pull between them. Whatever happened next, it would be a journey neither of them could have anticipated. The days following the successful presentation were filled with a whirlwind of activity. Diplomatic meetings, joint scientific experiments, and discussions about future cooperation between Earth and Lorith. But despite the business of the days, Elira couldn't shake the growing tension between her and Jason. Every time their paths crossed, every time their eyes met, something deep within her stirred. It was as though their connection was pulling them closer, in ways neither of them fully understood. Jason, too, found himself distracted by thoughts of Elira. He tried to stay focused on the mission, to keep his professional distance, but it was becoming harder with each passing day. The way her presence seemed to calm him, the way her soft voice made him feel as though he could trust her with everything. He couldn't ignore it. He knew that whatever this was, it was unlike anything he had ever felt before. One evening, after a long day of discussions, Jason found himself walking through the quiet corridors of the space station. His mind was racing, and he needed some fresh air. He stepped out onto the balcony, hoping the cool night air would help clear his head. To his surprise, Elira was already there, standing at the railing, looking out at the stars. "I didn't expect to see you here," Jason said, his voice soft but warm. Elira turned to face him, her violet eyes reflecting the starlight. "I needed some space," she replied, her voice carrying a sense of quiet contemplation. "The meetings are important, but sometimes I just need to think." Jason nodded, understanding. He stepped closer, standing beside her at the railing. Together, they gazed out at the vastness of space, the stars twinkling like distant beacons. "Elira, there's something I've been thinking about," Jason said after a moment of silence. "The bond between us. It's not just a passing thing, is it?" Elira's heart skipped a beat. She had been hoping for a moment like this, but she hadn't expected it to come so soon. She had been trying to understand the feelings growing inside her, but now that Jason had spoken the words aloud, it felt like the truth was finally being acknowledged. "No," she whispered. "It's not just a passing thing." There was a quiet pause, the weight of their unspoken thoughts hanging in the air between them. Elira could feel her heart racing, and she wondered if Jason felt the same unease, the same pull that she did. "Then what is it?" Jason asked, his voice gentle but insistent. "What does this mean?" Elira turned to face him, her eyes searching his for answers. She wanted to speak the truth, to say that she felt a connection that went beyond just their work, beyond the alliance, but she wasn't sure if it was something they could even define. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I feel like we're meant to be part of something bigger, something I don't fully understand yet." Jason took a deep breath, his hand instinctively reaching for hers. He felt the electric spark of connection at the touch, and it sent a wave of warmth through him. "I feel it too," he said quietly, "but I don't want to complicate things. We have a mission to focus on, and our people are relying on us." Elira nodded, though she couldn't deny the ache in her chest. She had come to Earth with the purpose of fostering peace between their two species, and yet here she was, caught between her duty and the unexpected pull she felt toward Jason. "I know," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to complicate things either, but every time I'm near you, I feel like something is shifting, something I can't control." Jason stepped closer, the space between them shrinking. He could see the conflict in Elira's eyes, the same conflict that had been weighing on him. "I can't pretend that I don't feel it too. But I don't know if we should act on it. We're from different worlds, Elira. Our people have just started to work together. We can't let personal feelings interfere with our mission." Elira's heart sank at his words, but she knew he was right. They couldn't afford to let their emotions cloud their judgment. The alliance was too important, and the stakes were too high. But even as she acknowledged that truth, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to their connection, something that couldn't be ignored forever. "I understand," she said softly, "but I can't help how I feel, Jason. And I think you feel the same way." Jason didn't answer right away. Instead, he simply looked at her, his gaze intense and thoughtful. Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "I do feel it. But right now, we need to stay focused. We need to prove that this alliance is about more than just us. It's about our people and the future of the galaxy." Elira nodded slowly, her heart heavy. She didn't want to admit it, but she knew he was right. The alliance had to come first. There was no room for personal desires to get in the way of the mission. But as she stood there beside Jason, she couldn't help but wonder if they were meant to be more than just allies. "We'll focus on the mission," she said quietly, "but I won't pretend that I don't feel this connection. And I know you feel it too." Jason looked at her one last time, his expression softening. "Maybe one day, when the time is right, we can explore this more. But not now." Elira nodded, feeling both a sense of relief and disappointment. For now, they would remain focused on the task at hand. But deep down, she knew that the bond they shared was only the beginning of a journey neither of them could have predicted. The days that followed were filled with an almost unbearable tension. Elira and Jason continued to work side by side, their professional demeanor masking the swirling emotions that each of them felt. The connection between them was undeniable, yet they both pushed it to the back of their minds, focusing instead on their diplomatic tasks. The Earth-Lorith alliance was moving forward, but there were challenges ahead. The intergalactic community had many differing opinions, and not all parties were as eager to cooperate as the humans and Lorithians. Some questioned the benefits of the alliance, while others viewed it as a threat to their own power. Tensions began to rise as various factions began to voice their concerns, and soon, the peaceful discussions they had been having turned into heated debates. Elira felt the pressure mounting. As a representative of the Lorithians, she had to ensure that her people's interests were protected. At the same time, she couldn't ignore the growing unease she felt whenever she was near Jason. Despite their best efforts to keep their personal feelings in check, it was becoming more difficult to remain focused solely on their mission. One evening, after another long day of discussions, Elira found herself in her quarters, unable to sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind racing with thoughts of the alliance and the undeniable pull she felt toward Jason. Her thoughts kept drifting to him, to the way he made her feel when their hands brushed, or when their gazes met across a crowded room. She knew they had both agreed to remain professional, but her heart told her something else. Her communicator beeped suddenly, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from Jason. "Meet me on the observation deck. I need to talk to you." The message read. Elira's heart skipped a beat. She quickly dressed and made her way to the observation deck, her thoughts swirling with anticipation and uncertainty. What could Jason want to discuss at this hour? Was it about the alliance, or was it something more personal, something that neither of them had been able to address until now? When she arrived, she found Jason standing at the railing, looking out at the stars. He didn't hear her approach, but as soon as she stepped into view, he turned to face her. His expression was serious, but there was a softness in his eyes that made her heart race. "Elira," he said, his voice quiet but urgent. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About the mission, about us, and I can't keep pretending that what's happening between us doesn't matter." Elira felt her breath catch in her throat. This was it, the conversation they had both been avoiding. She stepped closer, her gaze meeting his, her heart pounding in her chest. "Jason, she began, but he held up a hand, stopping her. "I know," he said softly. "I've been trying to focus on the alliance, on what's best for our people. But the truth is, every time we're together, I feel like I'm being pulled in two directions. I can't keep pretending that there's nothing between us." Elira felt a wave of relief wash over her, but also a deep sense of fear. She had wanted to talk about this, to finally acknowledge the connection they shared, but the reality of it was both exhilarating and terrifying. "I felt it too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I tried to keep it under control, to focus on the alliance, but every moment with you, it's like there's something more, something I can't ignore." Jason took a step closer to her, his gaze never leaving hers. "Elira, I don't know what this means. I don't know if we should act on it. But I can't keep pretending that I don't feel the same way. There's something here, something real." Elira's heart fluttered, her emotions a swirl of excitement and fear. "But we're from different worlds," she said, her voice trembling. "We have responsibilities to our people. If we let this connection get in the way, it could jeopardize everything we've worked for." "I know," Jason replied, his voice filled with both longing and concern. "I don't want to hurt the alliance, and I don't want to put either of our people in danger. But at the same time, I can't just ignore how I feel." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with the weight of everything they had yet to say. Elira found herself torn, caught between the duty she had to her people and the undeniable pull toward Jason. Was it worth risking everything for something she couldn't fully understand? Finally, Jason spoke again, his voice gentle but firm. "We need to figure this out. We can't keep pretending that it doesn't matter. But we need to be careful. We can't let our personal feelings interfere with our mission." Elira nodded slowly, feeling the same way. "I agree. We need to keep our focus on the bigger picture. But I can't promise that this will just go away." This connection, it's real. Jason reached out, gently taking her hand in his. The touch was warm, comforting, and full of unspoken understanding. "We'll figure it out," he said quietly. "Together." Elira looked at him, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions. They were standing on the precipice of something neither of them fully understood. There was so much at stake, so many lives depending on the success of the alliance. But in that moment, as they stood together, their hands intertwined, Elira knew one thing for certain. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. The days that followed the conversation on the observation deck were filled with a strange mix of hope and uncertainty. Jason and Elira knew they couldn't ignore the bond that had grown between them. Yet the responsibility they had to their people and the future of the alliance weighed heavily on them both. They couldn't let personal feelings get in the way of their mission. But at the same time, neither of them could deny the undeniable connection that had blossomed between them. As the tension in the diplomatic talks continued to build, it became clear that something had to give. There were factions on both sides that were growing restless. Some humans and Lorithians believed the alliance was a fragile dream that was bound to fail. Others, however, still held on to the hope that this partnership could create a lasting peace between their peoples. One evening, as the latest round of discussions came to a close, Elira and Jason found themselves in the private chambers of the space station, sitting in silence as they processed everything that had transpired. The weight of the day's events hung heavy in the air. "I'm not sure how much longer we can keep this up," Elira said quietly, breaking the silence. Her voice was full of concern. "The debates are getting more heated. Some factions are already calling for a breakdown in talks. If we don't act soon, we might lose everything we've worked for." Jason looked at her, his expression serious but filled with determination. "We can't let that happen. We need to find a way to bring both sides together, to prove that we're stronger united than apart." Elira nodded, her heart swelling with pride at Jason's words. Despite the challenges they faced, she knew he was right. The stakes were too high for either of them to back down now. They had a duty to both their peoples, and they couldn't afford to let personal feelings interfere with their mission. But as much as they both understood the importance of the alliance, there was something else they couldn't deny: their bond, their connection. The spark between them had only grown stronger over time, and it was becoming harder to ignore. They had both tried to push their feelings aside, but with each passing day, the pull between them only seemed to deepen. "I never expected any of this," Elira said softly, her voice carrying a hint of vulnerability. "When I first came here, I thought it was just about the mission. But now I'm not so sure." Jason reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "I didn't expect it either," he admitted, "but I can't ignore how I feel. I've been trying to focus on the mission, on our people, but the truth is, I care about you, Elira, and I think you feel the same way." Elira felt her heart skip a beat as she looked into Jason's eyes. There was no denying the truth in his words. She cared about him more than she had ever cared for anyone before, and despite the challenges ahead, despite the responsibilities they both carried, she couldn't imagine her future without him. "I do," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "I care about you, Jason. I've been trying to keep my feelings in check, but it's becoming impossible. There's something between us that I can't explain." Jason's heart raced as he looked at her. The warmth of her hand in his was enough to calm his racing thoughts. In that moment, the weight of the galaxy, the future of their people, seemed distant. All that mattered was the connection between them. "I know we have a responsibility to our people," Jason said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "But maybe, just maybe, our bond is part of something bigger, something that can help both our worlds." Elira looked at him, her heart swelling with hope. She had never felt more certain of anything in her life. "You're right. We can't let our feelings tear us apart. But maybe if we embrace this bond, if we trust each other, we can create something stronger than we ever imagined." Jason smiled, his grip on her hand tightening. Together, we can face anything. Together, we can make this alliance work. And with that, they both knew that this was the beginning of something new. The challenges ahead would not be easy. The road to peace between their peoples would be long and filled with obstacles. But as long as they had each other, they knew they could face whatever came their way. The next day, they stood before the assembly once again, the eyes of the galaxy upon them. Elira's heart raced as she glanced at Jason beside her. He gave her a reassuring smile, and she returned it with one of her own. Together, they had come this far. Together, they would go even further. The future was uncertain, but Elira knew one thing for sure. No matter the outcome, their bond would be their strength. And together, they would forge a new future, not just for themselves, but for the entire galaxy. As they took their places, ready to address the assembly once more, Elira felt a sense of peace settle over her. They had made a choice to stand together, to fight for what was right, and to trust in the power of their connection. And in that moment, she knew that the alliance between Earth and Lorith was only the beginning of a much larger story.